Hello, it's Brad Laurie or BlockchainBrad, and today we're speaking with a blockchain startup that many of you already know. It's been building for some years, and we have one of the key members of the team here. We are talking all things Acala, and we have Dan Reecer, who is the VP of Growth, to explain all the updates, all the information related to 221 Acala when it comes to exactly what they're doing right now. So Dan, thank you very much for making time to speak with us today.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Now, in the name of transparency, which is so important, all of you need to know I own no Acala tokens. I definitely want to. There's no question of that. Everyone knows that. And most importantly, this is a free interview. There is no compensation for this. The main reason we're doing it is for education for all of us. So Dan, again, thank you for making the time. Let's go straight into this. Now, as the VP of Growth of Acala, you hold a very significant role, and you've always been providing key information and updates for all of us. We've been reading your tweets. We've been really engaged. But Dan, let's talk about the fundamentals of DeFi. Now, we've heard a lot about DeFi for years when it's come to Ethereum, but now we know DeFi is that truly agnostic term, and we see a lot of talk about DeFi Hubs when we see Acala being referenced. Do you want to just extrapolate on this idea of a DeFi hub and how it relates to Acala, and then perhaps even extend that to how it moves beyond even just Acala in the Polkadot ecosystem?
Yeah. So first, I think we're thankful for all the work that the Ethereum community has done for the last 5-7+ years, because as a Polkadot ecosystem and as the Acala team, we're able to come in and take a lot of the innovation that these teams have built over the years and just build on that, using Substrate, the framework for building blockchains that Gavin Wood created when he started Polkadot. And what that's allowing us to do is to build what we're calling an all-in-one DeFi hub for Polkadot with Acala. So we're solving a few problems with this DeFi hub on Acala, including one, the all-in-one phrasing is kind of intentional, because when people come to the Acala application suite, they'll be able to do several things all in one place, where in the past on Ethereum, you go to Maker, you go to Aave, Uniswap. These are all kind of separate experiences and separate sites. But with Acala, we're building a few key products from day one. So the Acala dollar, the AUSD stablecoin, which we see becoming kind of a key de facto stablecoin of the whole Polkadot ecosystem. We're also building the Acala DEX. So this is a AMM style DEX, similar to what you've probably seen with Uniswap and Curve and all these. And then last is staking liquidity. So we're really excited about this, being able to unlock the liquidity of staked DOT. So previously there's, if you stake your DOT, it's staked and it's earning interest, but there's not much else you can do with it. And with liquid DOT, you'll be able to stake your DOT, get liquid DOT in return, and then go use that in DeFi. Like, for example, using it as collateral to get a loan of AUSD and use that however you'd like. So this is kind of what we've built in this all-in-one hub. And to your question around how we see this kind of playing with other ecosystems, we really see DeFi and blockchain in general as this multi-chain, this multi-chain universe that we're all building together. We look at Ethereum and we look at other blockchain networks as kind of partners. Like, we're all working together to build this vision. One great example is you've got Compound Chain, who just recently chose Substrate to build their own independent blockchain for Compound. And Betty Chen from our team, one of our co-founders, just made a proposal 2 or 3 weeks ago to help build this starport, or a gateway from Acala to Compound. And in that proposal, we're talking about bringing DOT to Compound for their kind of multi-chain money market that they're building, as well as bringing liquid DOT from Acala, and then on the other way around, bringing the cash token from Compound to Acala for use within our kind of DeFi hub that we're building. So yeah, really excited for everything that's to come. And I think there's just a lot that's going to happen in the next couple of years when everything on Polkadot starts rolling out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's so exciting to hear about that composable-with sort of feature and that narrative that's more than a narrative. We see that provable by code. And also, as you would know, there are many of those tech bridges being built by Acala, by Plasm, for example, to make that EVM compatibility more seamless. And it's great to hear about the compound connection as well, because in the past, we've seen a lot of the DeFi developments within those startups within the Ethereum eco. And now we're seeing them really pay attention to what the technology of the broader Polkadot and most importantly, the likes of Acala can do. And then again, really start to tinker with that potential and start to experiment, so that there are better applications on both sides. So once again, you see those bridges to establish that multi-chain. Now, in that context, Dan, can you tell us a bit more about the layer 0 to layer 1 analogy? I think that's really important we clarify that, because once again, that does set Ethereum apart from Polkadot's ecosystem.
Yeah, definitely. So at the most basic level, so Ethereum and Bitcoin are these, of course, single blockchains that everyone has been calling a layer 1 chain, where you've got the blockchain at layer 1, and then you can start building applications on top of that. But historically, these layer 1s like Ethereum, you can't actually alter the core blockchain without forking and causing a mess. With Polkadot, so when Gavin created the Ethereum virtual machine, he created and invented the Solidity programming language, then went on to found Polkadot and create Substrate, and solve many of the existing problems that we've been seeing with scalability and gas fees and things like that. So what Polkadot's built is this one layer below the layer 1, a layer 0 multi-chain protocol, which Polkadot's main purpose is to provide the interoperability between any blockchain that connects to Polkadot, and also for securing these blockchains. So a really important differentiator between Polkadot and other interoperability platforms is this concept of what we've called in the past shared security. What I think is more easy to understand is like plug and play security. So you can just plug in, and instead of having to recruit an entire set of validators, and you want like hundreds of millions of dollars to be able to have the robust security of the network, instead of having to do all that work and talk to all these validators, you as the development team, the Parachain team, can just come in and plug into this network of validators and inherit the security of the existing Polkadot network. So as builders, as blockchain builders, and then in Acala's case, we're building applications as well, saves us a ton of effort having to, avoiding having to go out and recruit that entire set of validators. So that's kind of the basic concept around this layer 0. And then every parachain like Acala, like Moonbeam, Plasm, Hydra DX, all these new parachains coming out, they're all at the layer 1. And then all of these parachains will have applications built on top of them. So it's like the comparison to Ethereum, it's like eventually having 100 Ethereums all connected together in one network, where each parachain has actually been built and customized for a specific use case. In our case at Acala, of course, this is a blockchain that has been customized for DeFi. For example, what this means is Substrate has allowed us to customize at the blockchain layer, like I mentioned. So this allows us to make, add any features we want over time and upgrade the chain automatically without needing to do a fork. So one example of this is like paying gas fees in any token. So we call it bring your own gas. So when we have the Ethereum bridge to Acala, for example, we'll be able to bring Snow ETH through the Snow Fork bridge, which is a cool name, I think, having Snow ETH coming in. And you'll be able to bring in your Snow ETH. And then when you're like doing a swap, for example, you can pay the gas fee in that Snow ETH instead of having to go out and like find ACA somewhere, learn what ACA is. It's just going to make the process a lot easier. And then one other thing that we've built into the Acala EVM at the blockchain layer is this concept of on-chain automatic scheduling. So with Ethereum, you have to use kind of APIs and off-chain services to do scheduling of transactions. But with this concept of on-chain automatic scheduling, you remove the need to trust and use APIs and automatically build in scheduling for transactions. So this has a ton of obvious use cases within DeFi, payments, things like that. So we're excited to see what builders can take this and build applications upon that here pretty soon.
And then it makes a lot of sense that those technological advancements you're talking about, not just even with the transactions, but even the speed of which they can be achieved.
Yep.
We know now that all the developments, right from the code and the ground up, and all the different tech stack that Acala and many other teams have built, it really affords for an extension beyond what we've seen in the past, even with the Ethereum network. So I wanted to ask you, in the context of those parachains emerging, which we'll get to later in the interview in that term, could we argue, or could we infer that Ethereum itself could almost act like another parachain, a very robust one, no doubt, with extreme network effects already and done incredible work? But when we consider the scope and potential of Acala, for example, as another parachain potential, and very likely to be so very soon, and because all the applications can be built on such a platform, is there a likeness there given the layer one analogy?
Kind of, yeah. So I would compare like an Acala type chain to Ethereum at this point. They're both, individual blockchains, but the difference is that as a separate network, kind of not built with substrate and not compatible exactly with Polkadot as a parachain. Ethereum as it is could someday, even ETH2 could eventually become one of these slots, a parachain slot on Polkadot. But at this point, it's going to be mostly using the bridging systems. So we've got the team I mentioned, Snowfork. They're actually pretty undercover. Their CEO, Aiden, is a great guy, super smart, and they're building a fantastic product. And the plan is to be fully trustless. So we'll have kind of a UI on the Ethereum side, and then there'll be UIs built out on the Polkadot side, and easily be able to transfer ETH, ERC20s, and then probably NFTs down the line as well between the two networks.
Right, and considering the narrative right now, NFTs, even though they've existed for some years, that's a pretty substantial comment to make, I think, right now in 2021, Dan. But given also the fact that you do have that seamless and increasingly seamless bridging technology that is happening, congratulations to all the team at Acala and even the other members of, I guess, the broader suite of Polkadot services and technologies like Plasm, where you really are building out the integrity of the technology to make this possible and to make it, I guess, the conversations much more about collaboration between Ethereum and the Polkadot ecosystem. And Gavin's always maintained that. It's all about trying to create that multi-chain environment, interoperable and composable scenario. Now, going back to you, I wanted to ask you a bit more about I guess the DeFi Hub aspect in terms of Karura, for example, because we see also that there's not just Acala equating to the DeFi Hub for Polkadot, but we also see with Kusama, another emerging DeFi Hub there. So what's the relationship? Because clearly you do have that direct connection with Kusama and also Karura.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love Kusama. So
yeah,
we're building Karura for the Kusama community. We look at it kind of like, and I've been saying this a lot recently, but it's a good analogy, I think. Like, just like a bank looks at their different markets, like maybe they start a bank in New York City, and then they realize that there's a demand in Berlin, in Germany, among the German population for their banking services. So what do? They open up another branch in Germany, and they serve both populations. We look at it the same way. There's obviously huge demand on Polkadot for DeFi, and the same thing goes for Kusama. You've got this pretty distinctly different community on the Kusama side versus Polkadot that has kind of grown apart over time. There's definitely some overlap, but we're building this to serve the DeFi demand of the Kusama community. In the same regard that Kusama was built as this place to have fun, to experiment in an environment with real value, significant value, after things have been tested on the testnet. So we're going to be able to use this in the same regard. So we'll run these two networks, Karura and Acala, in parallel. And these will continue to exist in parallel and even be bridged, because Polkadot and Kusama will be bridged. But on the Kusama side with Karura, we'll be able to launch like crazy new DeFi experiments, new features, I can't even predict what's going to come yet, but
yeah, and I mean
after we get,
that's why we're going to be
yeah,
talking for a long period of time in many different instances and series of where we
yeah,
can focus on some of those key developers of Karura, Dan. But I guess
yeah.
I wanted to ask you specifically within the context of tokenizing each of these different ecosystems as well. Is there a plan for each of them to have their own token? Because we know Acala's coming forward very, very soon with the Parachain auctions to really showcase what can be done. We know Kusama's been out for some time and doing incredible things when it comes just to looking at the performance of that token in correlation with anticipation of the network.
Yeah.
And then obviously Polkadot's done exceptionally well. So what about with Karura? What's the plan there specifically to tie up those, I guess, those key distinctions, but bind them all together?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Acala, obviously, the token that's going to be running like the utility of the network, the governance, everything is ACA. And on the Karura side, we have KAR, so the Karura token. And in a similar fashion of Acala having the AUSD stablecoin, we'll have KUSD, the Karura dollar on the Karura side, on the Kusama side. So this is actually going to be our first launch. So the next steps for Karura, we're getting ready for this whole crowd loan and parachain auction process to start. Mm-hmm. So when people are supporting Karura in that crowd loan process, in the parachain auction process, there will be a distribution for the supporters in the KAR token for that event. And then of course on the Acala side, same thing goes for ACA, and I can explain more about that.
Well, Dan, recently you did a great interview, a very introductory one with Elio Trades, and that'll be out again, as I understand, for everyone to see very soon once again. But when you were talking, what was really interesting was you had those key graphics, which I encourage all people to look at, that really explore exactly how the parachain auctions, my apologies for my dog barking, but that parachain auctions, that the process that's explained very clearly. So do you want to just touch on that a little bit about how the process works, in a very simple terms, because we'll catch up and do a deep dive specifically on this.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think next time we talk, maybe we can even show some slides, because there's a lot to break down here. But at the most basic level, let's use Kusama as the example. Everything that I'm about to say goes also for Polkadot, but since Kusama is coming first, let's use that. So with Kusama, the first step will be we'll know that crowd loans are beginning, and there will be an announcement around that. What the crowd loan is for is actually for each parachain team to raise contributions from their communities in the form of KSM tokens. And that allows them to use this kind of pot of KSM that gets sent into this, what's called a crowd loan module. It's like an actual substrate module within the blockchain. The team can't touch it. So this is not a fundraise. Mm-hmm. It's a crowd loan. You're loaning the KSM for that team to use in the parachain auction that then comes next. So crowd loan starts, and then the next step is parachain auction starts. So we know going into the parachain auction, the time that the auction will start, and we know the time that the auction will end. What we don't know is a randomized time that's picked in the middle of that auction sometime that will actually determine the winner. So this is why it's called a candle auction. It's actually a term from like the 16th century when they used actual candles and they didn't know when the light was going to go out. So at the beginning, what that does, just to back up, what that does with the candle auction is it avoids the eBay problem where everyone comes in at the last second and just bids as much as they can at the end. And you don't want that situation to happen with like parachain auctions. So the crowd loan enables the system to actually encourage teams and incentivize teams to bid their max as quickly as possible. So we'll see teams come into this parachain auction process, and what they'll do is like imagine what they raised in the crowd loan as like a stack of chips at a poker table. They will, when the parachain auction starts, all the different parachain teams, it might be 10 teams, they will all essentially push in their stack of chips all in at the beginning. And then it starts this, like what Robin on our team has compared to like a horse race where everyone in the community owns one of these horses, and it's going to be kind of a live event where you watch this stuff on chain, like who's winning, who's in the lead. So that will happen. And then the the auction will end, and then a winner will be determined at a randomized time. So whoever has the highest bid at the time that's chosen that determines the winner will win the slot. And say that's, for example, Karura, then we take Karura on, and Karura actually wins the slot on Kusama and begins to launch. When that happens, the KSM that was contributed by the community for Karura will actually be locked in the relay chain of Kusama itself. The team doesn't touch the KSM funds, it's just locked. And then in Karura's case, KAR tokens will be distributed in a certain ratio to the amount of KSM that each individual contributed to the Parachain auction process. Then at the same time, Karura is going to begin actually launching the network. The DeFi applications on Kusama will go live. So the Karura dollar will begin to go live. The Karura DEX will become active. Liquidity providers will begin providing liquidity for KAR returns. And then liquid KSM will be available for people on day one. So we've got the blockchain will launch, and then really cool thing about Karura is we've already got an entire set of applications ready to go that all the users on the Kusama community can use from the get-go.
Right. Well, that was a lot of information. And Dan, I just want to interject and say I do apologize for my dog barking. I just noticed someone has arrived to my home, and that's why our dog has gone crazy. But it is really important, I think, that people understand exactly how that parachain system works, and when it comes to the auction, when it comes to democracy that's built in, and also, as you mentioned, with that crowd loan structure. So I'll make sure that I put links below that provide that information with some of the graphics perhaps, or some of the just directing people to more awareness and understanding of the processes, because they are coming now. But when it comes to the roadmap, Dan, what is likely to come forward in the near future with regard to these crowd loans, with regard to the timeline when we can start to see some of these crowd-based events happening so people can engage more? And obviously there's a requisite there to utilize KSM, for example, and even Dotto, as I understand. So to help people prepare to get ready, what's your advice?
Yeah, so the question of when is the daily question that everyone's asking now. And I actually want to know when also. We're waiting on this. The whole kind of parachain auction process and everything that's being built right now. We're literally, the teams are building things that have never existed before. So it's really hard to determine exactly when the code will be ready. But it's definitely going to be soon. I don't even want to make a guess as far as when, but the next step will be, we'll probably hear from Kusama, from the Kusama brand, and potentially like Parity and Web3 around next steps. So what's going to happen with Kusama? When will the crowd loans begin? When will the parachain auction process begin, and all of that? With that process, we'll also probably get parameters, like exact parameters around how long is the crowd loan, how long is the parachain auction? Like there's a lot of unanswered questions still that we'll definitely be getting answers on whenever that announcement is made.
Right. Well, I would suggest to everyone to stay posted, also stay glued to the Twitter, to Dan's Twitter particularly, provides great information there, and just more generally being aware of the developments within the scope of parachains themselves, and how that I guess, the auctions are moving, the attention that they're garnering as well, because we don't really know, Dan. Reality is all this does happen organically through those crowd loan scenarios, but it is, I do suspect this is happening pretty soon. The movement seems to be, quite strong right now.
Actually, yeah. So as of today, this morning, like the practice crowd loans and parachain auctions actually just started happening on the testnet called Rococo. So Acala participated in that. And I believe we got the slot. Still confirming that. It just happened earlier today.
I did see that tweet actually come out from Polkadot.
Yeah. So things are getting close. Like you start to see the code move to Rococo. You start to see, crowd loans going on in the testnet. So obviously that means something is getting closer at least. Absolutely.
Now, one thing, Dan, I told you even pre-interview, I really wanted to talk to you about, that you mentioned in the LEO Trades interview, which I thought was fantastic. I definitely retweeted it. You said something like, you aren't really a Polkadot project if you don't have a parachain, and you qualified that, in the sense of Polkadot and also Kusama. So I wanted to just get your comment on that, especially with your mention of Rococo and the test nets, since they are public. Anyone can go and check those links and learn more about those key members of the testnet sort of position. What are your thoughts on stating that, considering that we do see a lot of things emerge in the crypto space that use that poker prefix that certainly don't marry with those that are looking like they're heading towards a parachain?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a complicated situation because there's teams that are, of course, like any team that's called a parachain now is actually a parachain candidate. Like we're all building these, what they actually are is like an independent substrate chain at this point. The moment we win an auction, we actually on Kusama become a Kusama parachain for Karura, and then Acala, when we win a slot on Polkadot, we become a Polkadot parachain. But up until then, you know, you kind of have to put your money where your mouth is and actually, you know, build the thing, connect to Rococo, go through this whole kind of crowdloan parachain auction process. It's not easy, but the teams who actually make it to winning these parachain slots will be truly Kusama parachains and Polkadot parachains. It's just because we're so early right now that people call it that. But if we fast forward to 2 years from now, there could be up to 100 parachains that are live on Polkadot, and there will definitely, like the DeFi Pulse websites of the world, there will be that for Polkadot. Like, here are the current parachains that are live on Polkadot. Here's how much time they have left in their slot. Here's when their slot ends. Like, here's their next crowd loan. Like, there's going to be all that stuff constantly going on, and you'll be able to see exactly who is a parachain on Polkadot because it's going to be on chain.
Right.
The other aspect of this is that there's also the application layer. So there are a lot of teams that are building applications that they plan to launch on Parachain. So they're just waiting on the Acalas and all of us of the world to launch so that they can build on top of that. But I would say, like, for aspiring teams in the ecosystem, you can do a lot better than using Polka and then something else after that for your brand. Like, there's so many creative things you can do around building a story and building a brand, instead of just kind of like, you know, latching on Polkadot's brand and trying to ride the coattails of Polkadot. So I would encourage like all the development teams to be creative, build your own brand, and have fun with it.
Absolutely. And considering, Dan, you know, we're starting with the potential of 100 parachains, you know, that's ambitious in and of itself, considering just how replete and how robust parachains need to be. But that's just the beginning. And as you said, that there's all these applications that can be built on many of these independent, very specific parachains for the future. And I liked one thing, I listened carefully to what you said and use the term when rather than if. And that's confidence plus, but that also suggests that you really are very confident in all of the different blockchains eventually having, you know, that you're related to, particularly having their own key parachain. So, you know, again, this is all moving so rapidly now. People are getting excited. But what's exciting you most in the roadmap for the short term, Dan, from now into, especially with the parachain auctions coming, the crowd loans? But what's one key feature perhaps that would educate many about the developments that are coming forward in the near future of Acala, for example, or even Karura, or any of the broader picture for Kusama and Polkadot?
I'm mostly excited for Parachains to launch. So the white paper of Polkadot, like the vision has always been, we're building this multi-chain network connecting blockchains together. So when the first parachain of Kusama launches, that's a massive deal. And then the fun part is, once that happens, these parachain auctions are going to be happening, likely, this is the parameter we're waiting on, but likely every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, maybe every month for the foreseeable future. So you're going to be having these auctions going on an ongoing basis for, you know, 5+ years, depending on what happens with like upgrades to Polkadot and how all of this stuff works. But once we have parachains live on Kusama, that means that that's already ready for Polkadot. It'll of course probably be refined and observed on Kusama and then move to Polkadot. When Polkadot launches, we will have parachains live on both networks and a bridge between Polkadot and Kusama. So you'll have assets, data, value flowing between the two multi-chain networks, which then leads to interoperability between parachains like Acala and Karura. We'll be able to, AUSD and KUSD will be flowing back and forth, liquid DOT and liquid KSM potentially flowing back and forth between these ecosystems, not to mention all the bridges to Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all these other chains that are building
And
bridges.
now you're starting to boast. Now you're starting to brag, because there's a lot of FOMO in all those different terms. And the reality is, as you sort of alluded to, is you have those foundational technologies and platforms. And we don't just talk about layer 0 here with that multi-chain protocol, but even when we come with the likes of Kusama and Polkadot, they work as foundational elements for everything else we're talking about here in the tech stack. What's potentiated or what's enabled through that. So it's only going to be more and more exciting as this starts to unfold and beyond the crowd loans. Really showcasing what these things can do is the exciting part, with the utility built in, and starting to see more adoption, more staking. There's so much more coming, as even with the bridging and interoperability with several other blockchains that are well known in the space beyond the Polkadot ecosystem as well. So it's just going to really get bigger. And this is designed, this interview, for all those listening, as the first of many with Dan and I. It's going to be that introductory element that we're going to focus on several different aspects of this as we build out more discussions over the years to come. But Dan, with regard to the foundation itself, the foundational parties, the members, the council, and obviously they are the bedrock for the code, for the content, for building out this. And then there's the team, you included. How are things going there? How are things building out? Clearly, the reputations of parity, of Web3 are all indirectly inbound in this as well. So there's a lot of investment through these foundational team members to make sure this is a long-term project. But I just want to get your comment on the confidence you have in the team and the key members.
And just to be clear, you're talking about the foundational, like the governance and treasury and all that's been going on Polkadot and Kusama so far, or Acala?
Well, I guess you could do both. You could give Polkadot a bit of a wrap as well, because obviously there's a direct connection, but specifically also Acala, because you're involved as a key member.
Yep. Yeah, so I think the good thing is that Polkadot and Kusama's governance, treasury, council, voting, all of this stuff has already been going on for months now and has proven that it works. So we're going to be using the same type of like modules or underlying technology that Polkadot's been using. So Acala will have a variety of governance councils. So we'll have a general council just like Polkadot has, likely something more kind of like financial focused. If you look at teams like Compound and Maker, there's a lot of decisions that go on around like certain, like, what are the fees that you're charging for taking out a collateralized debt position? Like, what are the metrics we're using to determine the cost of liquidation? Things like this they require experts. So we'll probably have a team for that. But all this stuff is not going to be live until we actually launch. So there will be kind of like an election period where people will actually vote with their ACA tokens for Acala and KAR for the Karura side. And that will all get stood up. The other aspect is treasury. One thing I didn't mention about the way that Acala and Karura work is we will have a treasury on both networks, just like Polkadot has.
Mm-hmm.
And this will be fed through transaction fees and other aspects of the network that will continue to build the treasury. So there will be decision-making over the treasury from the council that I mentioned that will be enacted or voted on. And then within the treasury, a really cool kind of new concept is what we're calling network controlled value. So there will be a decentralized sovereign wealth fund that's kind of a subset of the treasury. And this sovereign wealth fund will be able to do things like even investing in other tokens. Like they could have a position in KSM on the Karura side or a position in DOT within the Acala treasury, which is really cool and fascinating to me. But this will also allows us to become self-sufficient. So since these Parachain slots are limited in time, what this will allow us to do is build up our sovereign wealth fund to the point where we can actually self-fund our future Parachain slots without having to do all this, craziness of doing a crowd loan and a Parachain on.
That's a huge aspect that you built in. I hope that the people managing that are really, really effective as well, because obviously they're going to be key to the success of that fund. But it is a great way to sustain the growth also of the broader ecosystem and independent, members and blockchains within it, or parachains. So it's a great I guess, concept to add into it. And then what's interesting also is that you've built in this interrelationship with other ecosystems within the scope of Acala, within that conversation. And you're very inclusive of them. And so you have that democracy built into the crowd loans, but you're also trying to build out support within the broader Polkadot network. So for example, Centrifuge, Subsocial, Moonbeam, PokerWorld, ChainX, and the list goes on, Plasm, Interlay. I don't need to mention them all. They're all outlined on your website. But I liked that there is that inclusivity built in to really support each other as you build this out, because as you mentioned, the potential is infinite when it comes to each parachain individually. And there's going to be 100 over time at the bare minimum, which is exciting in and of itself.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of work going on between teams. You may have seen some of the tweets from the Acala side around this hashtag ComposableWith campaign. So we're trying to encourage and make it as easy as possible for people to use what's called X token, which doesn't matter. Basically, it's a way for people to start building interoperability between token transfers between their parachains on the test net. So we're working with a plethora of teams on kind of working with them through the process, getting these things set up to be able to begin showing like, look, this actually works. Like this cross-chain message passing works on testnet, which will then translate to the main net. So yeah, there's plenty of exciting projects going on within the ecosystem, building their own kind of customized blockchains for their specific use cases. And seeing these things all live working together will be pretty exciting.
Absolutely. And mate, on that note, it's exciting also to see the ETH DeFi community backing, other DeFi hubs like Acala, literally, when we see the likes of, for example, even beyond Hypersphere, who we naturally knew would invest, and support, with the likes of Jack backing that, and other key, I guess, well-positioned pro Polkadot backers and VCs and capitals. But then we see entities like Coinbase, for example, Coinbase Ventures, or DCG, or Arrington, for example, Pantera, Z Prime Capital. And I wanted to mention them, and again, people can go and look at all of them that are backers and partners. But what was interesting is that you see that ETH DeFi sort of hub of investors now paying attention to the broader scope of what DeFi really is. So in that conversation, it harks back to the value of Acala being a true DeFi hub, an authentic one for the future and for now. But then we also see more emerging from the Kusama network itself for DeFi. So I just wanted to, for a closing comment, given that you represent a DeFi hub, and there's also the very important Acala dollar coming that really is the bedrock for the stablecoin element that you're building as well. What are your thoughts on DeFi as a narrative, as a conversation, given that you are leading out as an ambassador and also a key member and team member, and also the VP for growth for Acala, and what is to come in terms of DeFi for the future? Yeah.
I mean, we're recording this video on a day that I think the number 2 richest person in the world, Elon Musk, tweeted about DeFi. Right. It's going mainstream. You've got people on Wall Street and financial hubs around the world that are starting to take notice of what's going on in DeFi. And people approaching us. There's people approaching, I know a lot of the ETH DeFi teams around, like, they're real world financial teams that are looking to integrate with DeFi on the back end. It's almost like what Acala is calling DeFi as a service. So how do we provide DeFi yield, like a yield engine for real world financial products? Like, for example, it could be somebody offering some kind of an account for their customer who may not even need to know that there's DeFi going on in the background, but generating yield on the DeFi side and converting that back through fiat to the front end, to the traditional customer. So in that regard, I think this is only the beginning. Like, it's moving really quickly. You've got highly influential people like Elon, like Naval. You've got Gary Vee getting into NFTs. Like, people are starting to wake up to blockchain. Like, we've known this for years, and people are starting to realize, like, wait, this is actually kind of important. We should be paying attention to this. Mark Cuban, to mention. He went to Indiana University, where I went, so that's pretty cool to see him getting involved in the space. And another example of someone making kind of bets in the DeFi space, in particular Polkadot, is the DeFi Alliance. This group is based out of Chicago and traditionally made a lot of, they were running an accelerator and are doing kind of investments now on the DeFi side, traditionally Ethereum only, and Acala was the first Polkadot project for them to start kind of incubating and getting involved in. So there's just a lot of action going on around the world, and it's going to be fun to watch.
Well, Dan Reecer, as the VP of Growth for Acala and also an ambassador for Polkadot, and so much more than that as well, mate. I want to thank you for your time for this introductory conversation. It's great we finally had a chance to catch up and be on camera. But for those who are wondering, Dan and I will be catching up for those key deep dives on specific aspects of Acala and even beyond that with Dan's knowledge of Polkadot. So you do get information from the source. Dan is, second to none when it comes to all this information. And obviously it's important that you get that educational content to really be informed. And that's really the key as you move forward in your understanding, likewise for each of us. So Dan, thank you again for making the time today and making sure that we are better informed about the developments. So just to recap, we see things like the crowd loans coming, the Parachain auctions, moving forward. We know that Parachains are important because they are, there's a set number from the outset. The aim is about 100. Initially, we know that Acala is well positioned for these auctions coming forth. You're clearly confident with the term when, not if. We also know that the likes of those key DeFi investors, traditionally who've looked to Ethereum are now moving across into a broader space and putting their money where their mouth is. And we also see the legitimate code translating into something more, and that's the applications that are coming forth now, where we see those key developers tinkering effectively on Kusama, on Karura, on Acala, on the Polkadot network. So thank you, Dan, for that introduction. I wish you all the very best as you continue, and I'm sure we're going to see things very soon emerge that will help qualify and explain a bit more about these parachain auctions so that we can start to experience right on the blockchain, live on chain, exactly how this is going to unfold.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun. I'll see you back here again soon.
Absolutely, mate. Take care.